You ever get a call from a number you don't recognize? Maybe you ignore it. Maybe you answer. But that night, when the phone rang in the middle of the storm, I wish I'd let it die. Because what was on the other end, it wasn't human. This is the story of the voice in the rain, and the thing that followed it home. It was a Friday, the kind of storm that makes the world feel small, just you and the walls closing in. I was alone, curled up on the couch with a book, when the landline rang. Strange, right? Who uses landlines anymore? But my grandma insisted I keep it. For emergencies, she said. Turns out she was right. I let it ring 3 times. On the 4th, I answered. Static hissed, sharp and metallic. Then, a child's voice. "Help me," it whispered. Young, maybe 6 or 7. "I'm scared. He's coming." My blood went cold. "Who is this?" I demanded. The line crackled. "Emily, I'm at the old school. Please, he's in the walls." The call dropped. I stood there, frozen. The old school? There was only one around here, Fairview Elementary. Shut down in the 90s after a fire. Kids died. Teachers, too. But that was decades ago. I tried calling back. No answer. Just silence. And then, guilt. What if it was real? What if some kid was trapped there in this storm? I grabbed my keys. Stupid, I know. But I couldn't live with myself if I did nothing. The rain was worse now. The roads rivers. Fairview loomed ahead, a rotting husk of brick and broken windows. The playground swings creaked in the wind, chains rusted to dust. I parked, flashlight in hand, and stepped into the storm. The front doors were chained, but someone had pried them open, fresh scratches on the padlock. I slipped inside. The air stank of mold and wet ash. My flashlight beam cut through the dark, revealing peeling murals, cartoon animals with melted faces. "Emily?" I called. No answer. Just the drip-drip of rainwater through the ceiling. I followed the sound, down a hallway past classrooms frozen in time, tiny desks overturned, blackboards scrawled with chalk, numbers half erased. 1, 2, 3, 10, then 10, 9, 8, 0. My skin prickled. "Emily!" I shouted. A giggle echoed from upstairs, high-pitched, playful. "Up here!" The stairs groaned under my weight. The second floor was worse. Water pooled on the tiles, reflecting my flashlight like a funhouse mirror. Classroom 2B stood at the end of the hall, its door slightly open. "Emily?" I whispered. The giggle came again, closer. "You found me." I pushed the door open. The room was empty. Just a skeleton of a classroom, shattered desks, a teacher's chair tipped over. And on the wall, handprints. Dozens of them, small and black, like they'd been burned into the plaster. "Emily, where are you?" Silence. Then, a whisper from the corner. "He's here." The temperature dropped, my breath fogged. And then, I heard it. A low, wet sound, like something dragging itself through the halls. "Emily?" My voice shook. No answer. The dragging grew louder, closer. I backed into the hall and saw it. A figure, hunched, twisted. Its skin was blistered and blackened, peeling off in strips. No eyes, just hollow sockets dripping with rainwater. It crawled on all fours, its limbs bent backward, nails clawing at the tiles. And it was humming. A nursery rhyme. "Ring around the rosy." I ran. The thing screeched, the sound tearing through the storm. "Pockets full of posies!" it wailed. I crashed downstairs, slipping in the water, my flashlight tumbling into the dark. The front doors were still open. Rain lashed my face as I sprinted to the car. The engine roared. I glanced back and saw her, Emily, standing in a second-floor window, her face pale, her dress soaked. She waved, smiling, and beside her, more children, dozens, all burned, all staring. The thing slammed into my car as I peeled away. A blackened hand smeared the passenger window. "Ashes! Ashes!" it screamed. I didn't look back, not until I was home, Doors locked, lights blazing. The police found nothing the next day. No broken chains, no handprints. Just rain, and ashes in the shape of small feet leading to the woods. I quit my job, moved cities, but the storm follows me. Last week, my new landline rang. Static. Then, giggles. "You left us," Emily whispered. Now he's angry. That night, I woke to the smell of smoke. On my window, a tiny black handprint. And outside in the rain, something humming. We all fall down. I don't answer the phone anymore. I have driven this road 1,000 times. But that night, that storm, I swear the rain wasn't just water. It felt alive, hungry, and what I picked up in the downpour, it wasn't human. This is the truth. This is what happened. It started on a Tuesday. I'd stayed late at work, another soul-crushing shift at the warehouse, and by the time I clocked out, the sky had turned the color of wet concrete. The radio warned of flash floods, but I ignored it. Big mistake. My old Honda Civic groaned as I merged onto Route 17, a 2-lane highway that cuts through the Pine Barrens. No streetlights, no gas stations, just miles of skeletal pines and swampland. The kind of road where your headlights feel like a flickering candle in a cave. The rain came fast. 1 minute, it was drizzle. The next, a waterfall. My wipers couldn't keep up. I leaned forward, squinting through the blur, when something darted into the road. A deer? No. Too tall, too still. I slammed the brakes. The car fishtailed, hydroplaning, and skidded to a stop just inches from her. A woman, soaking wet. No coat, no shoes. Just a thin white dress plastered to her skin. She stood in the glare of my headlights, her arms limp at her sides, rainwater streaming off her fingertips. Her hair clung to her face like black seaweed, but I could see her eyes. Wide. Desperate. "Please," she mouthed. Not a sound. Just the shape of the word. I hesitated. Every horror movie I'd ever seen screamed at me to drive, but she looked broken, like a bird with a snapped wing. Against my better judgment, I unlocked the door. She slid into the passenger seat, water pooling at her feet. The smell hit me first. Damp earth and something metallic, like old pennies. "Thank you," she stammered, her voice raw. I handed her my coat, but she didn't take it. Just stared ahead, trembling. "Where to?" I asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she pressed a shaking finger to the fogged window, drawing a symbol. A circle with a cross through it. "Drive," she whispered. "He's coming." I didn't ask who he was. Not then. The road was a black river now, the pines bending under the wind. I glanced at her. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, revealing a bruise, purple and angry, shaped like a handprint. "You're hurt," I said. She flinched, pulling the fabric closed. "It's nothing, just drive faster." We rode in silence for miles. The radio sputtered static. My phone had no signal. And then, the first sign. A flicker of movement in the rearview mirror. A pair of headlights, far back but gaining fast. "Is that him?" I asked. She didn't turn, just dug her nails into the seat. "Don't let him take me," she breathed. "He'll put me back in the ground." The headlights grew brighter. A truck, a rusty Ford with a cracked windshield. It rode my bumper, horn blaring. "Lillian!" A man's voice boomed through the storm. "You can't run!" she screamed, curling into herself. "Faster! Please!" I floored it, the Honda shuddering. 70, 80, 90 mile per hour. The truck kept pace, its engine roaring like a beast. And then, the road ended. A dead end. Just a chain-link fence and a sign. "Private property, trespassers will be shot." The truck skidded to a stop behind us, blocking the exit. "Get out," Lillian whispered. "Now." We stumbled into the storm, the rain needling my skin. The truck door slammed. A man stepped out, hulking, wild-eyed, a shovel in his hand. "You're mine," he snarled. Lillian grabbed my wrist, her grip icy. "The woods! Go!" We crashed through the trees, branches whipping our faces. The man's footsteps pounded behind us. "I'll bury you deeper this time," he roared. Lillian didn't look back. She dragged me toward a clearing, and that's when I saw it. A grave, freshly dug, the dirt slick with rain. The headstone read, Lillian Hart, 1985 to 2019. I froze. This is you? She turned to me, her eyes black pits. He thinks he can keep me here, but the storm, it wakes us up. Before I could speak, the man lunged from the trees, shovel raised. Lillian shoved me aside. Run! I ran. Branches tore at my clothes. The storm swallowed their voices, his screams, her laughter. I didn't stop until I reached the road. My car was gone. The truck was gone. Just the rain and a white dress tangled in the barbed wire. The police found me hours later, hypothermic and babbling. They didn't believe me. Not until they dug up the grave. The coffin was empty, except for a wedding ring and a lock of hair. Lillian's husband confessed. Told them he'd killed her in a rage, buried her in the woods, but her body never found, ever. They closed the case, called it resolved. But I know the truth. I've seen her since. On rainy nights, when the air smells like wet earth, she stands at the edge of the woods, waiting. And sometimes, if the storm's loud enough, I hear him too. The shovel, the screams, and her voice whispering, "Don't let him find me. Don't let him." I don't drive Route 17 anymore. After the stillbirth, my wife couldn't sleep. She'd wander the house at night, whispering to the nursery we'd never use. But when the storm came, it brought something else. Something that wanted to be cradled. And now, I can't get it out of my house. The doctor said it wasn't our fault. These things happen, they said. But these things leave hollow spaces. In your heart. In your home. The nursery stayed untouched for months. Yellow walls, stuffed animals gathering dust. Until the first storm of autumn. That's when the knocking started. Not at the door. In the walls. Soft at first. Then louder. Like tiny fists punching the plaster. My wife, Clara, heard it first. "It's her," she said. "She's trying to come back." I didn't believe her. Not until the night I saw it myself. I was in the basement, the storm raging outside, when I heard it. A giggle. From upstairs. From the nursery. My blood turned to ice. Clara was at her sister's. The house was empty. I climbed the stairs, flashlight shaking in my hand. The nursery door was ajar. The mobile above the crib spun lazily, though the window was shut. And there, in the corner, the old cradle. My great-grandmother's. We'd stored it in the attic, but now it sat by the window, rocking gently. Empty. But the sheets, they were damp. Like something wet had been lying there. I called Clara. She came home that night. "It's a sign," she said. "She's here." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But when the storm returned a week later, so did the knocking. And this time, it wasn't alone. We woke to the sound of lullabies. The old music box in the cradle, rusted shut for decades, was playing. Clara sat bolt upright. "She's here," she whispered. We followed the sound to the nursery. The cradle rocked faster now, the music box screeching like a wounded animal. And the sheets, they weren't just damp, they were dripping. Black water pooled on the floor, reeking of pond scum and rot. Clara reached for the cradle. I grabbed her wrist. "Don't," I said. But she pulled free. "She's ours," she hissed. Her hand brushed the sheets, and the room exploded. The window burst inward. Rain and leaves swirled into a vortex above the cradle. Clara screamed, clutching her hand, black veins crawling up her arm, and then we saw it. A tiny hand, gray and bloated, gripping the cradle's edge. "Mama," it gurgled. Not our daughter's voice. Something older, hungrier. We ran, locked ourselves in the bedroom. Clara's arm was necrotic now, the black veins spreading. "It's not her," she sobbed. "It's something wearing her face." The storm raged for hours, and the whole time, the cradle rocked, the music box played, and the thing in the nursery called for us. By dawn, Clara was gone. Her eyes, black as oil, her skin, cold and waxy. She stood over me, smiling with too many teeth. "She's beautiful," Clara whispered. Come see. I fled to the garage, but the doors wouldn't open. The storm had flooded the tracks. No escape. That's when I remembered the attic. Great-grandma's journals. The answers had to be there. The attic was a tomb of old memories, dusty trunks, faded photos, and there, in a rotting box, the journals, pages stained with brownish-red fingerprints. The last entry was dated October 31st, 1932. The cradle must never be used. It does not rock children. It rocks the drowned ones. They come with the storm. They take. They replace. Burn it. Burn it. A giggle echoed below. Clara's voice, but warped, wet. Daddy, come play. I grabbed the journals and a gas can. The nursery door was open. The cradle overflowed with black water now, tiny handprints leading to the closet. Inside, Clara, or what was left of her. Her skin sagged, her mouth stretched into a permanent scream. And in her arms, it, the thing from the cradle. Gray. Rotting. Smiling. Our baby, not Clara crooned. The thing reached for me. Dada. I doused the room in gas, struck a match, and ran. The flames caught fast, fueled by the storm's wind. Their screams weren't human. Not even close. The fire department called it faulty wiring. They found Clara's body in the nursery, cradling well, they said it was a doll. But I know what I saw, what I heard. And last night, when the rain came, the knocking returned. In the walls. In the new walls. Because whatever was in that cradle, it didn't burn. It's waiting. And next time, I won't have a match. I don't sleep during storms anymore.